Hey, what's up, filmmakers? Welcome back to another live stream. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I think it's been almost a year since I've done a live stream. So it's 2024, time to get back on it and hang out with you guys. It's always a good time. Today we're going to be talking about the camera gear that I'm going to be bringing into 2024. Holy cow, we're here already. It is blowing by. So if you have any questions about your camera gear or rigs that you're using or maybe stuff you want to add to your build, definitely leave them in the comments right now and I'll get to as many of them as I can on this live stream. I think we'll have plenty of time to get to them. So it's great to be here with you guys. Hopefully you're having a good holiday if you're in America and you've got the day off. So we're going to take a look at kind of all different pieces of the camera rig that I'm using right now. Some of the main components that I use. And so we'll look at lenses, top handles, battery power solutions, everything like that. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, or you're just getting started rigging out your camera, this is going to be a great tutorial for you. And if you're watching this, live, or you're watching this in, the retake, you're watching the rerun of this, the replay, leave comments below and I'll get to those as well. So let's check it out. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the camera that I'm using. So I'm going to see if I can cut to the other angle here. I don't normally use this angle. I'm actually got my iPhone set up as a second angle today. And what I'm going to be rigging out is my Sony FX3, which is really my go-to camera. It's the one that I'm using the most right now, and I just love it. So the first thing you need, of course, is a good camera cage. And what I'm using here is just the Small Rig half cage. This is specifically for the FX3. And Small Rig doesn't make this exact one anymore. You might be able to find it on some website, maybe eBay or something. But this is the half cage where the grip side doesn't have any bit of, metal protection. But the newer one does have that. So if you wanted more mounting points here on the right side of the grip, you're going to get that. And it's designed for the Sony FX3 and the FX30. But either way, that's not as important. So it doesn't matter which camera you're using. If you don't have a Sony FX3, that's okay. Everything we're going to talk about today is going to be applicable to just mirrorless cameras in general, mostly ones that are like this smaller form factor. So could be something like a Canon camera, Fujifilm, maybe one of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, whatever it is, you want to start off with a good camera cage. That's going to give you all the mounting points for building out your rig. And of course, that added protection. So a lot of advantages to doing it, but it doesn't have to be the FX3. It's just what I'm showing you today. Most of these parts will apply to other cameras as well. So I'm starting off with this Small Rig cage, and not sponsored or anything by Small Rig. I buy a ton of parts from them. And I just like them a lot because they're some of the cheapest, most affordable parts. I also really like Tilted stuff because they've kind of fallen to that realm where they're pretty affordable as well. Small Rig's definitely the cheapest and pretty good quality. So now that we've talked about the camera cage, that's your base for starting off for a good camera rig. Let's get into some of my favorite things, and that's a top handle. So there's a bunch of different ways to throw a top handle on your rig. And my favorite way is by using a NATO rail. So you're going to need a piece of NATO rail on top of your camera. And this one is just mounted on with these two little 1/4-20 screws. If you don't have that, you can buy a little NATO piece and pretty much mount it on top of any cage. Some cages have NATO rail already built into it. So there's a good chance you're not going to need it. Now, let me show you some of my favorite handles. And actually one of the first ones I ever bought. So this one's from Small Rig, and it bolts on with two 1/4-20 threads. I don't recommend getting something like this anymore that bolts on. It is extremely sturdy because it bolts on, but it's also slow. If you need to change it out quickly on set, take it on or off for whatever reason, if you're running and gunning, you don't really want something that bolts on. So I wouldn't recommend it. You definitely want something that's essentially quick release. So this is another pretty affordable one from Small Rig, and it's got the NATO clamp. It also has a nice little Allen key built into the side, so you can take it, tools. You can basically use this for taking things on and off of your rig. You don't need any sort of tools with NATO rail. That's what's nice. So I'll show you how this one just slides right on, and then you got to tighten it down. So that's one option. This one also has area locating pins in the front so you can mount a monitor, and I'll show you that a little bit later. But this is a really cheap, pretty simple solution from Small Rig. This one was a little bit more pricey because it's got the nice wooden grip on it. But what I like about it is my hands are pretty big, and they're definitely not small, and it gives you a lot of space to grip. Whereas with something like this, it's significantly shorter. You don't have as much hand grip on there, and this just kind of contours to your hand, the shape of your hand a little bit better. So really like this one. And I've linked all of this stuff down in the description. So if you want to pick up any of the gear that I'm talking about, definitely look in the description. I tried to list everything out like into categories, whether it's a camera, a lens, batteries, that sort of thing. So it's easy to find. Now let's look at one of my favorite top handles that I've been using recently. This is the lightweight one from Small Rig, and it also uses NATO clamp. So really easy to take on and off. And that's one of the huge advantages of using NATO rail, is that you are not pulling out a tool every single time you want to add something to your rig. So I really like this because you could just simply slide it on and then tighten this down. And what I like about this is the tightening little bolt is on top, so it doesn't bump into the camera. Whereas with these two, you can see it's in the back, and that ends up hitting the body of the camera sometimes, which is really annoying and frustrating when you're trying to tighten it down, and that's overhanging. You can see, hopefully in this angle, how these overhang. So there you go. You can see how they overhang off the bottom of the NATO rail, and that's definitely annoying. This one screws on nice and easily. So there's the top handle. I love that. It's lightweight, contours to your hand. It's just a really, really good, simple one. And then it has a couple different cold shoe mounts on it, which is awesome because if you want to add a microphone, like a receiver for a Rode Wireless Go or something, you've got it on the right side, the top, and on the left side, as well as two on the back. So you've got one here on the top of the handle and one on the very back. So there's just a ton of mounting locations for cold shoe. And of course, you've got lots of 1/4-20 threads, area locating pins, everything like that. So really, really good top handle. It's pretty affordable. I think it was $30, maybe $35. You have to look at the listing, but pretty good top handle, really easy to take on and off. So now I want to show you how I'm mounting my monitors. So I think that's really the next key component to a good camera rig, is you got to have an external monitor, because as you know, the little LCDs on the back of these cameras just aren't good enough to tell when things are really sharp and in focus. Sometimes you can think it's in focus, but it's like focused on, your talent's ears or their nose or something, and not perfectly on their eyes. So I don't usually run with just the LCD. I'd say pretty much 95% of the time I'm running an external monitor, whether that's here in the studio or out on location or on a gimbal or whatever it is, I'm running a monitor. So I'll show you how I mount a monitor to mine. And I've been doing this for years, and I've been a huge advocate for it. And I just think it's the most low profile way. So on the front of my top handle, I like to mount the monitor here. This one specifically has area locating pins. Now, some people, in my opinion, make the mistake of mounting it on top of their handle using the cold shoe. And I'll tell you why I do not like that. I actually hate that. Cold shoe mounts are not very sturdy, especially for a heavy monitor like the Ninja V, which, once you throw the SSD on the back and a big NPF battery, it's pretty heavy, especially with a cage, and it can just slide right off of that cold shoe once you get it mounted. And that's a disaster to have your monitor just fly off. So I do not recommend that. And it just makes it even taller. I don't want to add anything to my rig to make it even taller. So instead, I just use the area locating pins in the front. That's what they're there for. They're literally built for this exact thing. And Small Rig has a piece for that, which is their little monitor mount. And let's see if I can get this close to the camera. It has area locating pins, so it's anti-twist. So the last thing you want is your monitor twisting and turning on you in the middle of a shoot. That is the worst thing when it's, if you put it on a magic arm or something. I hate magic arms. It'll twist and turn. You don't want that. You want something like these area locating pins to keep it nice and in place. So before I put this on the front of the top handle here, I do want to show you two other monitor mounts. This is the same sort of thing, but it bolts on with 1/4-20 threads. So you could bolt this on top of your cage directly, or on top of handles or whatever it is. You could bolt it directly on. And it does keep it really sturdy and firm. But if you want to move quickly, you don't want something like this because it just takes too long to mount on and off. So I don't really use this piece anymore unless I've got a bunch of monitors mounted simultaneously on different rigs and I have to use it. Here's one other one, depending on your setup, that I really love because it is NATO mount, monitor mount on both sides. So on the bottom and the top. So for instance, if I wasn't running this top handle and I just wanted to go directly monitor mount on, I could just NATO mount right here. And then I could put the camera, the monitor right on top of this with NATO mount. So let me show you that. And this rotates around. So however you want to orient it, it's really nice. Get this in the shot. So for instance, this Ninja 5 has NATO mount on the bottom of it. And really, of course, your camera monitor is not going to come with NATO mount. You got to throw a cage on there to get this, but try to get any cage you can with NATO rail because it just makes it so much easier to mount. So I could just slide this right on and you can kind of put it wherever you want for your rig. I like to keep it centered, of course, tighten it down and boom, there we go. Now I've got the monitor mounted in a pretty clean way. I really love this. If I don't want a top handle, maybe I'm just throwing it on a tripod and I'm working in the studio. This is a fantastic way to mount a monitor. So this is the small rig, NATO to NATO rail mount. And it's just really, really solid. Wherever I put it, it's going to stay. It doesn't flop around, which I'm sure if you've worked with like cold shoe mount ones before, you've seen how floppy they are. This is really, really solid. It stays wherever you put it. So I absolutely love that if I'm running all NATO rail. But for this rig, we're going to be running a top handle, and so I'll take this one back off. But really, really good solid mount here. Pull this off. And let's go ahead and put the top handle back on. So this is our, again, our lightweight small rig top handle that's NATO mount. And then with these area locating pins here, make sure you get one that has area locating pins. When you're reading the descriptions online, it'll usually say, but it's the larger hole in the middle, and then you'll have the locating pins on the top and bottom and left and right. So we'll go ahead and tighten this down. And this is just going to be a really low profile way. Let me tilt the camera up here. Just a really low profile way to mount your monitor. So it kind of depends on the shoot. I might be using the Ninja 5 if I want to record externally to an SSD, specifically in ProRes RAW, or I'm still rocking my original small HD focus. So this has been discontinued. They don't make it anymore, but I still love it because it's one of the most lightweight and thin monitors. You could find these on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, things like that used. The small HD Focus 5, still one of the best in the world, in my opinion. Really good. It has really good OS. I really like the small HD OS. But I'm going to throw the Ninja 5 on here. Did you call it Ninja 5 or Ninja V? I still call it the Ninja V, but everyone always trolls me in the comments when I call it a Ninja V. It sounds cooler to me. All right, so there you go. Now you can see it. Nice, clean mount. Let me tilt the camera back up here just a little bit more. Really nice, clean mount on the front of the monitor, or on the front of the handle. Keeps it low profile, and you can adjust it wherever you want. So I love that. Let's take a look at some of the comments. I want to make sure I get to you guys. I know I start to rant when I go into camera rig builds, but let's see what's going on. What's up, Peter? He says there's a handle from Tilta with NATO on the bottom and airy pins on either side. That's cool. So I think that's a really great way to mount things, is with those two mounts. They're my absolute favorite mounting options, NATO rail and area locating pins. I think they're the most solid. So yeah, you have to put a link up for which one you're talking about. I'm not sure exactly which one that is. I do have one Tilta top handle here, and I do like to use this one from time to time. I don't know if it's the one you're talking about exactly, but let's see if I can show you. Let me know if this is the same one you're talking about. It's their like lightweight small one that has the NATO rail on the bottom, and then it has the area locating pins in the front so you can mount a monitor. The only thing that I struggle with this top handle is see that angle, how it projects forward. It makes the monitor kind of like sit at a funky angle. I can't get it perfectly straight back up at me, like nice and perpendicular. So, but otherwise I like how small and compact it is when I'm trying to do a really small rig. Tilt a small rig when I'm trying to do a really light, compact rig. So yeah, but Peter, link the one you're talking about. It's not that one, he says. Okay, yeah, link it and I'll check it out. I try to find, I got a whole collection of top handles. This is not all of them. I do have more. It's an addiction. I love top handles. Someday I'll design my own, hopefully. That's cool. Just like buying them. So, and testing out different ones. I'm always trying to perfect the rig. I don't know if you guys are like that, but the rig is never perfect. I'm always trying to make it better and better. All right, let's see. What's up, Just Michael? How you doing, dude? He says, should I build an editing PC? I want to upgrade for work and editing. So, yeah, Michael, I would say you probably don't need to build out a full editing PC unless you're doing like really heavy editing with VFX. You can get away with editing seriously on just a normal, I don't know why I'm calling it normal, but on a pretty standard MacBook Pro with an M1 chip. The new silicon chips are fantastic. They work really, really well with pretty much everything, with Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, the three juggernauts in the editing space. Works fine. I mean, I've edited tons and tons of videos on an M1 and now I'm on an M2 Pro, but both of them work great for editing. So unless you're doing heavy VFX, like using After Effects, Unreal Engine, you probably don't need to build out a huge editing machine. I've seen a lot of guys do that sort of thing where they build out this huge editing machine and then it's just like kind of overkill for what they need. So I would save the money, honestly, get something like an M1 or an M2 chip, and then use the other money to buy more camera equipment that you've been needing instead of building a really expensive PC. Yeah, that's just my take. But great questions, guys. Keep them coming. Let's switch back to the rig here. So you can see this is compact, and sometimes, honestly, I run with it just like this. This is literally all that I will use. The camera, a top handle, and a monitor. Of course, an HDMI to plug it in. I'm not doing that right this moment. But it's nice because it's compact. It's a really good way to see. I can just look down at the monitor and see exactly what I want. It's always centered, and I can place it wherever I need. The only spot where this doesn't work great is if you're trying to film yourself. Say you're making a YouTube video or something and you can't see yourself because the monitor's obviously facing the operator. Then what I'll do is I'll just loosen this up a little bit, flip it around. Oops, loosened it too much. But I'll flip it around like this, and so then I can see myself and angle it wherever I need. So that is an option if you have to film yourself. But yeah, so that's the first one here, and let's keep going. Let's get into. We've talked about our top handles and our monitor mounts. I'm just keeping a list to make sure I don't miss anything. Monitors. So the Ninja 5, they've updated it. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's not even called the Ninja 5 anymore. They have a new model. It's just called the Ninja. And it basically is exactly the same hardware-wise. I think they changed the color to like a gold, and then it has a updated operating system. Still recommend this, especially if you want to shoot ProRes. It's really, really good. And of course, the Small HD is great if you're still running it. But Small HD has a bunch of other new monitors. I forgot to grab one. It's in my case, but it's the Cine 5. That's a really good one from Small HD. The reason that I mostly tend to stick with the Atomos system and Small HD for my monitors is because the operating systems are so good. They're so reliable, and the tools built into them are absolutely fantastic. Whereas if you go with some of the more off-brand monitors, I won't name any, but if you go with some of the more off-brand ones, the operating systems tend to be a little bit more glitchy. Sometimes the touchscreens or buttons don't always work. They just have a worse operating system experience, which if you love things like iPhone and Apple and you just like how it always works for the most part, these systems going with Atomos or Small HD, It is a bit of an investment because they're usually more expensive, like $500 roughly for their entry-level monitors. You're just going to have much better experience, especially on set. If you're on set and you need your monitor to work every time, that's what I like to go with. And I know I already showed this, but I've got cages on any of the monitors because these things tend to get knocked around a little bit on set, and it gives you more mounting spots, especially if you want to mount your monitors vertically. I know everyone's doing this nowadays, myself included. Most monitors don't have quarter 20s on the thread, quarter 20 threads on the side. So by throwing a cage on there, you get those other mounting spots. And you can see on this one, it even has area locating pins and quarter 20 and everything. So you can mount it vertically for, you know, your TikToks and Instagram reels and stuff. So that's where we're at with monitors. Let's see. Let's jump back into the comments for a second. See what, make sure I'm not missing anything. All right. Just Michael saying, what's your most used piece of gear besides your camera? Man, that's a good question. I would say, I don't want to sound redundant, but I would say it's the monitor. Definitely the monitor is my most used because that's just how I make sure things are always in focus and that the exposure is proper. You know, using zebras, using false colors, it's definitely going to be a monitor. So this is my most used piece of kit right here: a camera, a lens, and then a monitor, usually on a top handle. That's what I would definitely say would be my most used by far. But I know it's kind of boring. Other than that, another boring piece of equipment would probably just be a tripod or gimbal. Those would definitely be the most used. What about you though, man? Let me know in the comments what you guys use the most besides your camera. That's a good question. It's a little bit boring, but just the basics. All right. Let's see. Peter's saying, I always struggle with rig safety. Do you calculate that which screws getting the most pressure and adjust the rig so you elevate the pressure from screws that potentially would break? Yeah, that's a good question. I've never had any screws break before. Let me know if you have. That would suck. Definitely haven't had any screws break on me ever. I definitely, like, my rule of thumb for any rig build is that it has to be super solid, like no rattling. And you've probably seen this in my videos if you watch them in the past, but I call it like basically the no shaking and no rattling. So I'm, vigorously shaking this and whacking my mic, but nothing is like wiggling or moving. So if I shake my camera to death, I don't want this monitor like, woo, flop over or flop to the left or right or something, or the handle to have play in it, like really substantial play. If it does any of that, my rig's not solid enough and I need to switch out some of the parts and upgrade them. So always going with something super, super solid, which this is, and trying to keep a low profile. So that's why I like my monitor mounted out in front. So I eliminate a little bit of that extra height. As the rig starts to expand out or go higher, as you know, it does get a little bit more loosey-goosey and probability of things getting broken or damaged. So yeah, I would say as far as screws though, I haven't had anything break. Let's see what else Peter says. If you add a lot of things to rods, do you calculate on how safe your setup is and how much weight the rods can endure? No, to be honest. The rods are pretty solid. Let me see. So I've got a ton of different 15 millimeter rods. I think these are some of my longer ones, the 12-inch. These things hold a lot of weight. I've never seen them bend ever, even with a lot of things on them. So I don't usually calculate that out. I mean, maybe it'd be good to know, look it up and see if they have a tolerance. Obviously the tolerance is going to change, like where they might bend depending on the length of it. The longer it is, the more probability, but no, just to be honest, no, I've never calculated that out. Maybe if your rig gets super heavy, I think my heaviest rigs are usually in the 15 pounds, maybe 18 pounds max, but they don't usually get very heavy. And whatever I'm mounting on the rails isn't that heavy, like a matte box, a follow focus, little accessories like that. They don't weigh very much. And the camera is usually just resting right on top of the 15 millimeter rods. So it's not enduring like a lot of stress and weight. So not something I calculate out, but I would say rig safety, definitely, don't build anything out and put it under a lot of pressure or weird, like precarious position if you think it could fail. You've seen, I'm sure, behind the scenes photos or videos of camera rigs on the back of cars and them like coming off and crashing. But, they're usually going really fast and doing crazy turns and stuff. In general, I think if you're just using your camera on a tripod or gimbal, a slider, handheld, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Don't worry about it too much. Let's see. And Just Michael says, what is the material made of? Yeah, if you're talking about the 15 millimeter rods, I think it's just aluminum. They also have carbon fiber ones, which are pretty strong as well. But yeah, pretty much all of these camera parts are aluminum. I don't think any of them are steel or anything. It's all machined, like CNC'd aluminum at least from SmallRig and Tilta. I don't think any of them are steel or titanium like Apple or something. I think it's just straight up aluminum, which I've always found to be pretty solid and work pretty well. So that's what I've noticed in general. Let's see. Yeah, Atomos Ninja is made of metal. Yeah, the outside body of it is nice because it does feel solid and protects the monitor pretty well, being like an aluminum housing on the Ninja. So I really like that. And most used parts from Just Michael, he's saying his mic and tripod. Yeah, I got to agree with you there. Definitely the microphone. I always forget about that. It's not as exciting for videographers and photographers to talk about audio, but it's a huge part of what we do. So yes, I guess the mic. Do use the mic a lot too, next to the camera and a good tripod. Nice. Okay, so let's see. I've talked a lot about the different monitors that I'm using. Let's get into batteries and power supply. So with something like this, a smaller camera, obviously a lot of you guys are going to be running just the internal batteries on your cameras. And they're getting better, especially on something like the new Sony Alpha cameras. I'd say most of them last about 45 minutes, maybe an hour on these Z batteries. They're way, way, way better than the old like FPW 50s or whatever they were called. Those were the worst. But yeah, the new NPFZ100 batteries, these ones last about an hour, maybe 45 minutes, depending on what you're doing. Photography is going to last a lot longer than running 4K video. But if I'm going really light and small, I'm definitely just running the internal battery. But when I need something for a longer shoot, there's a lot of different battery solutions that I'll do. So let me grab some of that equipment here. All right, so one of the first things that I will use if I'm working in a studio, let's say I show up to a client shoot, it's like a boring corporate head, talking head kind of thing. A lot of times what I'll do is I will run continuous power. And specifically on something like these mirrorless ones, a lot of times they don't have a place to just plug in for continuous power unless you're running something like the Sony FX6, which is what I'm running right now to do this live stream, is the FX6. That has a little port in the back where you plug in continuous power. On these, there's not a continuous power port. A lot of times there's USB-C, but I don't like the USB-C input as much as I like just running one of these. So this is a dummy battery. Again, this is a Z battery, and this is from some random company on Amazon called Go9. And what I would do if you're looking for these sort of things is read a bunch of reviews to make sure no one's in the comments, saying, hey, this fried my camera or something. So be careful about that. But yeah, this is just a dummy battery, goes right in the bottom of my camera. And this will give me continuous shooting, endless shooting for hours and hours and hours on set. And I just throw it in like that. And the cable comes out the bottom. And you can use this sort of thing. They make dummy batteries like this that run into an outlet for pretty much every camera body. So if you're not running an FX3, you can find them for pretty much any Canon, Panasonic, anything like that. Just look up your battery model and dummy battery power. So I'll just plug this into an outlet and run interviews on this setup for hours and hours because continuous power it's just more reliable than running V-mount batteries or the internal battery. Having it die in the middle of a great interview spot, that would definitely be tragic. So yeah, I love running continuous power. And I was looking at a Facebook group today and someone was saying, I get that warning when I turn on my camera and it says like, not trusted battery or whatever, warning, like continue. I've been doing this for about a decade that I've been running these dummy batteries on different cameras. It's okay as long as you get a good one that's solid and it has, you know, a power converter, the power adapter, and it gets you the right voltage to your camera. This one's only 8 volts output. Most of the Sony Alpha cameras run at 8 volts. So if it's above that, you run a risk of frying your camera. So just check that out in the description, or I could see on the output of this that it's 8 volts. It's definitely something you want to check and make sure. Let me see if I can get this thing to focus. There we go. You can see output 8 volts. So as long as you're running something like that, you're going to be good. But yeah, that's one way I like powering my cameras. And so I'm going to jump back into some of the comments. Want to make sure I'm keeping up with you guys. What's up, Nikolai? Welcome in. Says, can you help me with this? Would a 360 V mount be appropriate for the Blackmagic 6K Pro? It weighs 2 kilograms. 360 V mount. What do you mean by that? I've got a bunch of different types of V mounts. Do you mean? I don't know exactly what you mean by that. We could jump into some of the V mount stuff. Show you. Maybe this will help answer your question. Let's. I'll put the continuous power away for a second here. Pull this back out. Oops. And jump into V-mount batteries. So these are some of the original V-mount batteries that I started off with. These are from D&O, and this is 95 watt hours. And yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by 360. If you mean like, yeah, see if you can clarify that for me so I can better answer your question. But this is 95 watt hours and it's 14.8 volts. So you do not want to plug your camera directly into this unless you're using something that has power conversion, because this D-tap out is 14.8 volts, which will fry your camera. So make sure the dummy battery you're using has a little power adapter in line. Most of them have one in line. It's like a little box in line. I should grab one, but I don't know where mine's at. Somewhere in the office. So yeah, you need to use a converter if you're doing that. But this is the second way. I know we're kind of jumping in, but I'm jumping ship a little bit here. But this is the second way that I'll power my camera besides the internal batteries, is using V mounts. And what I'm doing now is honestly I'm using all of the mini ones. Look at that size difference. They're just so much better. So they're pretty much the same price. So if you're going to get V-mount batteries, honestly, do not buy the big ones anymore. They're bulky, they're huge, and this actually is higher watt hours. You can see it's 99 watt hours. This is 95. Look at the size difference. The technology has gotten so much better for batteries. So don't buy the big boys anymore unless you really want to. It does have a little indicator to tell you how much battery life you have, but yeah, I think they're just too bulky, especially when you're running it on the back of something like a little mirrorless camera. You can see it starts to hit into the handle, depending on your rig. It's just huge. So definitely go with the mini ones. There's a ton of different brands. This one from Small Rig, you can see it's light, or it's short. I mean, so it fits under the handle. So if you want to butt it up against the screen or whatever, it's good. Good form factor. So yeah, go with the mini V-mount batteries. That's pretty much all that I'm using anymore, is the small ones. They just work a lot better. But Nikolai, yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but yes, I run V-mount batteries. I ran them on the Pocket 6K and the 6K Pro many times. I don't have my Blackmagic anymore. I sold them to switch just fully to Sony, but yes, you can definitely run V-mount batteries on Blackmagic. You basically have to because, as you know, Blackmagic has terrible battery life. The little Sony NPF batteries and those, or Canon ones, are terrible. They just don't last long. So you're going to have to run a V-mount battery on those. So let's see, make sure I'm answering any more questions here. Just Michael says, is it okay that I film on an iPhone 14 Pro? My dude, of course. This camera right here is the iPhone 14 Pro. So that's what I'm using for a second angle on this live stream. And you probably couldn't even tell unless, you know, you're really looking closely that this is an iPhone shot. So yes, definitely. I literally using it for this live stream, paired up with my Sony FX6, which is a $6,000 camera with a G Master lens, and they pair together fine. So definitely, I use my iPhone to film so many things, sometimes little insert shots for videos where I'm just like, I need to get something quick and I don't want to rig up my camera, or I don't have it, whatever it is. I'll just grab it on my phone. And pretty much all the social media posts I do, like shorts, TikToks, that sort of thing, I almost exclusively record all of them on a phone. So yes, the best tool you have is usually the one that's with you, and that's almost always a phone. So I definitely recommend going with something like that. No issues with using a phone for video production. I love it. And photography. All right. Yeah, Peter says, if you can, trade up for the 15 Pro because of log. I know. That's been something I've been wanting to do, is trade up to the iPhone 15 Pro, and more, not even as much for the log. That's really nice. But for me, it's the USB-C ports and the ability to actually record to an external SSD. So if you can throw something like one of these Samsung SSDs, this is a 1 terabyte Samsung SSD, the T5, and just record endlessly in ProRes to something like this from your iPhone, that's just awesome. So I don't know, maybe someday I'll switch to the 15 Pro. But, and log too. I do want to play with that and see how good it looks. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Phil Stone saying, not on this subject. What's up, Phil? He says, but what glass would you work for golf for a 6600? You know, close and out to 300 yards or so. Yeah, that's a really good question, man. I would say, I'll talk about glass more in depth here in a minute, but man, if you need both and you're basically run and gun, you're like on a golf course and you're trying to get both close up because you're standing next to the player and you're trying to zoom in and like see where the ball is landing out on the green, you're definitely going to need a pretty good zoom. So I think Tamron just came out with one that's like a 28 to 135 or something. I'd have to look it up, but trying to get something like that goes like pretty wide all the way up to pretty telephoto. I think it's 135 millimeter. I have to look it up. That seems like a pretty good lens. And they should have it in Sony E-mount for your a6600. But otherwise, what I might do honestly for that is just running a Sony 70 to 200. That's a great all-around lens. 70 millimeters is obviously pretty close, but if your player is, you know, swinging a golf club, you don't want to be in that close to him to get hit. So 70 millimeters is enough to be probably, I'd say like 10, 15 feet from him and still get a full body shot. And it's going to look really nice. You're going to get that great compression and everything, especially being out on an open green. Going to get a really good shot. So I'd probably go, honestly, the 70 to 200. That's probably what I would do. Or one of the Tamron, like 24 to 135 or whatever it is. I got to look it up. But yeah, it's probably what I would do for golfing, or having two camera bodies if you can. One that's on a wider angle, like a 24 to 70, and then 70 to 200 as well for the stuff that's out there once they hit the ball. So that's probably what I would do if you can do two lenses or two bodies. Let's see. Peter's saying, have you ever had a V-mount slip off the plate? I'm seeing a lot of talks about gold mounts versus V-mounts because some say that V-mount is not as secure. Yes, this is a really good question. So I have not had a V-mount slip off if it's seated properly. So have I had it kind of come off if I didn't click it in? Yes. But they lock in really, really well and do not come off if you do it properly. So let me grab my V-mount plate here. So here is just a standard. This is the, I believe, Tilta. Yeah, so this is a Tilta V-mount plate that goes onto 15 millimeter rods. And this is actually something I was going to talk about. So we're right into it. We're in the batteries now. So with something like this, it has a good lock on there. So if you get this on and you properly seat it, there we go, it should not come off. Like it really, let me try and, I don't want to break it, but, whoa, accidentally pressed the release. Looks like it popped off. I pressed the release. So let me try that again without accidentally hitting the release button. Okay. Yeah, that's not going anywhere until you hit the release, which I just did, which is hilarious. So yeah, it locks on really solid. And you know, if I've mounted them upside down before many times on a V mount, and it locks and does not come off. So as long as you have it properly seated, no, it's not going to pop off on you. Yeah, I mean, gold mount is more expensive than V mount. It's definitely the more premium way to go. So if you have the budget, you could definitely invest in gold mount batteries and gold mount plates. On set, that's typically more professional. On Hollywood sets, a lot of times they are running gold mounts. But I've been on plenty of commercial sets where people are running V mounts, and they work fantastic. So it's up to you. It's up to the user. Me, I'm a budget-friendly person. I like to buy cheaper things. That's just how I am. The V-mount works great for me. It has for a long time. I've never had them pop off as long as it's seated on properly. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. And I've mounted them upside down a lot of times on my rigs because I wanted them to sit down lower on my rig. So, no, shouldn't be any issues with that, man. But good question. I know a lot of people wonder about gold mount versus V mount. I think it's preference, and I think it's one of those like bougie things in the industry. They're like, "Ooh, I use gold mount." Don't feel pressure to buy expensive gold mounts. All right, let's see. So, Just Michael saying, "Can you thank Peter for helping us out with our questions?" Of course. Nicely done. That's what I love about this community is I don't have all the answers, and you guys know a lot of stuff about this equipment, and you're out shooting and learn things that I don't. So please keep helping each other out in the comments. I love that. All right. Let's see. So I want to talk about the V-mounts a little bit more. So we've talked about the types I'm using now, which are these minis. Let me grab one other. I'm also using these. This is the FX Lion Nano 1. They also make a Nano 2, which is a little bit bigger. This is 48 volts, I believe, 48 watt hours. Yes, 48 watt hours. So it's small. It's obviously almost half the size of the 99 watt hour small rig because it's about half the power. So there's less battery in there. But what I love about this one particularly is, of course, it's light and small, but a battery like this, that's only 48 watt hours, is perfect for powering other devices other than the camera. So something like this is great for throwing on the back of a wireless transmitter or a monitor. And I'll show you how I do that. So for instance, I got stuff everywhere here. For instance, on something like this, a monitor, right? You've got a standard Sony NPF battery on the back. Pretty much everything is using that these days, Sony NPF. So as you know, they don't last the longest. And if you want the longest lasting ones, they end up like sticking out really far. And I don't love that. They just die really easily on me. I kind of hate NPFs. So I'm using something else instead. And I'll show you what that is. So I'm using this adapter. And this is called a Sony NPF to V-mount adapter. Ta-da! It's one of my favorite little devices. Now, it's not perfect. It's not flawless. It's pretty affordable. I think it's about $30, $35 or something for this adapter. But it makes it possible to use V-mount batteries on all of your Sony NPF accessories. So I'll show you, make sure I can get this on. Like I said, it's not perfect. There we go. Slide it into the NPF slot on the back of my small HD monitor. And there we go. Now, this monitor supports V-mount batteries, which is awesome because you know they last way longer. So let's grab this Nano 1 battery and see if I can lock it in here. And this adapter that I'm using isn't my favorite in the world because it does struggle a little bit to lock on. But once it is locked on, it's good. Yeah, let me see. This one's a little bit of a struggle to get on, but should be good now. And you can see just a little battery pack there. Gets a little bulky, that's for sure, but it's nice to be able to run a V-mount on the back of a monitor like this. And I don't know if you've seen something like this before, but there's a little power switch, and then of course you can turn on the monitor as long as everything's seated properly. Let me see if I can get this to work. I've had a little bit of issues with this adapter and it's seating perfectly. There we go. There's not a lot of them out there, so just look on Amazon for this. I don't know if I actually linked it below, but I'll link it after the stream if I can. But it's Sony NPF to V-mount adapter. And it's great because now this thing will last a lot longer, and you can see it's still relatively compact as opposed to using the mothership of V-mount batteries. A giant boy like this on the back of a monitor would just be huge and ridiculous. So using these nano ones is just so much better, and this will last a lot longer than these Sony NPF batteries. So that's one of my favorite ways to use V-mount batteries on my rigs. And so something like this I could throw on this camera rig, and instead of this, this is the little battery adapter for the Ninja 5, if you're familiar with that. You can plug this directly into a wall outlet with their cable, or you could run this back to a V-mount battery or whatever you want. You can plug this in and just go into DTAP. A couple different ways to do it, but this is definitely one of my favorite ways to run all my NPF stuff off of a V-mount. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions about this little adapter. It's pretty unique. Oh, and one other thing is it also has a DTAP out. So if you run something like this and you want to power another device off of one V-mount, say maybe even your camera, you could plug your camera into here and run everything off of your monitor battery and the camera or a wireless transmitter or something. So it's a pretty versatile little piece of kit. Like I said, it's not perfect. I'm waiting for someone bigger, like Small Rig or Tilta, to make one. This is some random Chinese company that, like, it's decent, it works, but it's not perfect. So yeah, I think that's kind of everything around the V-mounts. Actually, I do have a couple other things, different rig pieces for V-mounts. So we'll talk about that. Let's see. Sorry, all my stuff is on the ground because there's a bunch of, it's too much stuff to fit on one desk. Let me move it around here. Okay, so as far as mounting the V-mounts on my camera rig, what I'm doing is I'm mounting the V-mount battery either with this, which I showed earlier. This is a standard V-mount plate from Tilta. You can get these from all different companies. And now this is nice because you could just throw it onto 15mm rods, and then you can plug in all kinds of accessories. This has, DTAP, 12 volt out, 8 volt out, 8 volts, what you're going to need for your camera. So it has a lot of options, and it, converts the power of your V-mount into a bunch of different things. So you might need one of these different power types, but I don't use these as much anymore because most of these ports are built into batteries. Like this Small Rig battery has a couple different power options here. See if I can show you that. So you see that they've got 8 volt out, which is what you need for a camera. Usually the Sony cameras, or 12 volt out, and then they've got USB-Cs. So what's great about that, now that they're adding like basically kind of these smart batteries, you don't need these V-mount battery plates anymore. You just need a way to mount the battery, but not with all the electronics in it. So that's where something like this comes in. This is a Small Rig V-mount plate, little V-mount battery plate. And as you can see, there's no electronics. It's just a hunk of aluminum. So this is something that you can throw your V-mount battery onto, just like that, and power up your camera. And so I'll show you how I'm doing this. This has a NATO rail mount on the bottom, and then on the bottom of my camera cage, it's also NATO rail. So it keeps things really slim and light. And I'll show you how this just, see, as long as I've got everything unlocked, make sure. See, I think I have it locked right now. Here we go. Sorry. Hard to tell if I've got what I've got going on here. See if I can do this properly. There we go. Okay, so just took a sec to figure out which direction to put it on here. So there we go. So on the bottom of my cage, it's a NATO sorry, not NATO. I keep calling it NATO. Arca Swiss. My bad. Arca Swiss mount. Hopefully you guys caught that. So it's an Arca Swiss mount here on the bottom, then Arca Swiss for the V mount. And there we go. Now I've got a V mount on the back of the camera. And you can adjust the distance that it goes off of your rig. And again, this will work with any camera that has Arca Swiss on the bottom, any camera cage, or you could put Arca Swiss plate on the bottom of your camera rig. You could slide this in and out depending on how compact you want it to be. Then the last thing you need to do is run the cable out of the V-mount battery and into your camera. Put the dummy battery in there. Or you could also run out of here. It has USB-C, and run it into the side and do USB-C power in, depending on what you want to do. So a lot of different ways to power the camera. I'm usually just running it on a dummy battery, like I was saying earlier, but you could definitely do this with USB-C. That'll work totally fine. And then it's kind of nice. You can also adjust it. So there's a little knob. You can adjust this and flip out the screen. So sorry, I'm not hitting all the release buttons here. You can flip this out and you can then flip out your monitor. So a lot of really nice ways to run the V-mount battery. But one final one I want to show you for the V-mount, because I'm kind of diving in deep on the V-mounts, and then I think we've covered most of what I wanted to cover in the live stream today, is just this one other simple, really, really simple, overly simple mount for V-mounts. It's tiny, very compact, and this is just so you could throw on a V-mount battery with absolutely nothing else, and it's mounted on this little hinge. And so there we go. That's it. It's extremely compact. And you can just mount this and kind of tilt it wherever you want and lock it off. So I love that. This is my whole 15 millimeter rod setup, and it has an Arca Swiss mount on top as well, so I can throw the camera directly on top of that. But that's one way of doing V-mount batteries. Another way. It's a bunch of different options, but I love that. So let's see. Take a look at the comments real quick. Make sure I'm getting to them. Just Michael says, what's it like working on commercial shoot? So I've worked on all different types of shoots, and, commercial shoots like shooting ads for social media for companies, some of them that have ran on TV. And depending on the size, the set size, it definitely is a lot of fun when you're working with a large team and you have, set designers, and you have someone just focused, doing focus polling, and everyone someone just running audio and that sort of thing. On the smaller stuff, when it's just me or me and another person, there could be something fun about that too. It's just quick and run and gun. But a lot of times it's fun to be on big shoots where there's a lot of things happening, but then you're just a smaller piece in a huge shoot. So there's a bit of a downside on that if you can't be in control of everything happening. So yeah, and just Michael, have you heard of Nicholas Grant? I have not. I'll have to check him out after the live stream, see if I can learn a little bit about learn about him. So, yeah, in terms of the rest of the camera rig stuff, that's really the basics of building out a camera rig. And I wanted to get into a little bit more details, but we're running kind of short on time on the stream today. But this is really just a good basic rig for me that I love to run. And let's see, where did I put that V-mount battery? Over here. See if I can get this back on. So you can see a really simple setup that's going to work honestly for any camera. Throwing a V-mount on, a top handle, a monitor, and then a lens. The only last thing I would add is an ND filter. You have to have it. This is the Polar Pro Helix Mag Lock. And so this is something I'm always using to make sure that I can get that nice shallow depth of field. So I'll be using this all the time on set if I'm not running something with internal variable ND filters. So yeah, this is a really simple rig. I love it. I wanted to get into a few other things, but I think this is a good starting spot for a camera rig. I don't know about you guys, but I love keeping it pretty simple like this. I don't have all the cables plugged in, but you get the gist. This should definitely work for you. So yeah, if you have any questions, definitely leave them down in the stream or in the replay, and I will get to all of them about your camera rigs. I plan on doing more live streams like this this year talking about camera gear. I want to do more camera rig reviews. I don't know if you guys remember those or saw any, but I was reviewing people's rigs. They were sending pictures, and I just talk about them, and we discuss what you're using and give you some of my tips on what might improve it and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments. But it's been awesome hanging out with you guys. Thanks so much for jumping on. Cognition says, how many minutes did I miss? I don't know. How long have we been streaming for? I don't even know. I can't even see. I think we've been streaming for like 45, 50 minutes, something like that. So I'll be doing more live streams this year. So thank you guys all so much for joining. Hopefully you got something out of this on rigging your own cameras out. And I'll catch you guys in the next live stream. Have a good rest of your day and a good week. See you later.